In a village forgotten by time, deep in the heart of Judah, a prophet named Habakkuk dared to do what few would even imagine: question God. In an era of darkness and injustice, when evil seemed to prevail and hope vanished like dew under the sun, Habakkuk raised his voice in search of answers. But what he received was not just an answer, it was a vision, a secret he was to keep until the appointed time. This secret, hidden for generations, would not only change his life but the destiny of an entire nation. What was the mystery that God revealed to Habakkuk? And more importantly, why was he chosen to bear such a burden? Before we dive into today's story, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Stick with us until the end, because this story might be more surprising than you could ever imagine. The silence of God. It was a golden evening on the hills of Judah, but the beauty of the landscape couldn't mask the rot spreading among the people. Habakkuk, a man of average stature with eyes marked by restless concern, watched the village marketplace. The voices of merchants mingled with the cries of hungry children, while men of authority passed by with an air of indifference. It was impossible to ignore. Corruption and injustice were everywhere. Habakkuk felt a deep pain in his chest. He was a prophet, chosen by God to deliver his will, but where was God now? Evil thrived, and the innocent suffered. The prophet walked to the top of a hill, where a gentle breeze made the leaves whisper. There, he lifted his voice. "How long, Lord, must I call for help, but you do not listen? Or cry out to you, violence, but you do not save? Why do you make me look at injustice?" Silence was the only response. Habakkuk felt the weight of the heavens, as if the absence of an answer was louder than any word. Doubt began to gnaw at his soul. He knew God was sovereign, but why allow Judah to sink so low? The next day, Habakkuk walked the streets of the village. He saw a farmer beaten by soldiers for failing to pay exorbitant taxes. A widow wept beside her home, seized by royal officials. The people's pain was palpable, and Habakkuk felt his own faith being tested. That night, he couldn't sleep. As the wind blew, causing the small lamp in his house to flicker, Habakkuk knelt once more. "Lord, are you not from everlasting? Are you not the holy and just God? Why do you allow this to happen?" But again, silence enveloped him. Hours passed as Habakkuk remained there, his eyes fixed on the wooden ceiling, wrestling with the feeling of abandonment. He knew God was present, but why did he seem so distant? When dawn came, something shifted. A sound, unexpected and faint like a whisper of distant thunder, filled the air. Habakkuk felt a chill run down his spine and knew something was coming. Habakkuk sensed that God's answer wouldn't just change his life, it would challenge everything he believed. Yet, he wasn't sure if he was ready to hear it. The first encounter. In the early hours of the morning, while the village still slept, Habakkuk left his humble home. The air was cold, and the damp earth crunched softly under his feet. He climbed the hill on the outskirts of town, the place where he often prayed for clarity. But that morning, he didn't know what to expect. The unsettling feeling from the previous night still lingered in his mind like a shadow. Reaching the summit, Habakkuk sat on a rough rock and gazed at the horizon. The first light of dawn painted the sky in hues of gold and violet, but his eyes were fixed on the emptiness ahead. "God, if you are listening, please answer me," he whispered, his voice heavy with weariness. And then everything changed. The wind suddenly stopped, as though nature itself held its breath. A brilliant light broke through the horizon, not like the ordinary glow of the sun. This light was golden, resonating with a melody that seemed to pierce his soul. Habakkuk's heart raced, and his instinct was to cover his face with his hands, overwhelmed by awe. "Habakkuk, my servant." The voice was like the sound of rushing waters, both powerful and full of peace. Habakkuk fell to his knees, feeling small and unworthy. "I see what you see. I hear the cries of my people." Habakkuk slowly lifted his eyes, his lips trembling. He could not discern a distinct form, but the light seemed alive, enveloping him completely. "Then why, Lord? Why do you allow evil to prevail?" The voice replied calmly, yet there was a weight to the words. "Because I am at work. I will raise up the Babylonians, a fierce and ruthless nation, to bring judgment upon Judah." The words struck Habakkuk like thunder. The Babylonians? He knew of their reputation, merciless, brutal, and without pity. How could God use a nation even more wicked to punish Judah? "Lord, how can you do this? Is your justice not eternal? How can you tolerate the wicked destroying those more righteous than they?" The light pulsed, and the voice spoke with unwavering firmness. "The plan is mine, and my ways are not your ways. What I do now prepares for what is yet to come." Before Habakkuk could ask more, a vision filled his mind. He saw cities in ruins, the people of Judah taken into captivity. Yet amid the shadows of destruction, he caught a glimpse of something greater, a kingdom of peace and justice where all nations would worship the one true God. When the vision ended, Habakkuk was breathless. He felt as though he had been in the presence of something far beyond his understanding. "Write what I have shown you," the voice commanded. "Though it may seem to delay, its fulfillment will come at the appointed time. The righteous will live by faith." The light began to fade, and the wind returned, whispering through the trees. Habakkuk was left alone on the hill, his heart heavy and his mind reeling. He had received an answer, but it was harder to accept than the silence. The prophet descended the hill, a mix of awe and determination within him, yet the doubt still burned. How could he deliver such a devastating message to a people who had already lost all hope? The promise of justice. Habakkuk walked slowly back to the village, burdened by the revelation he had received. God's words echoed in his mind, "Write the vision, though it lingers, it will surely come to pass." But how could he write something so dreadful? More importantly, how would he convince the people that this was truly from God? By the time he reached the village, the day was already underway. People busied themselves with their daily tasks, but Habakkuk noticed what others seemed to overlook, the despair etched on their faces. These were men and women who had lost everything: lands, harvests, dignity. They lived under the crushing weight of corrupt leaders who enriched themselves at the expense of the weak. Habakkuk could delay no longer. He locked himself in his home and prepared a wooden tablet, carefully smoothing its surface. With a heated iron stylus, he began to write. His hand trembled as he etched each word of the vision he had received. He knew these words would be hard to hear, but God's command was clear. "Behold, I am raising up the Babylonians, a ruthless and impetuous nation, that marches across the earth to seize dwellings not their own." Habakkuk paused, taking a deep breath. He continued writing, but his hand stopped again at the weightiest words. "The vision awaits its appointed time, it speaks of the end and will not prove false. Though it lingers, wait for it, it will surely come and will not delay." He remembered the vision, the ruins of Judah, the suffering of the people, but also the glimmer of something greater, something that seemed unattainable in the present. The righteous will live by faith. That was the promise meant to sustain God's people. When he finished, Habakkuk stepped outside and called for the village elders. They looked at him curiously, noting his pale complexion and the intensity in his eyes. Gather the people, he said. I have a message from the Lord. The elders hesitated but obeyed. It didn't take long for a small crowd to assemble. Habakkuk climbed onto a stone in the village square, holding the tablet with the message. Listen to what the Lord has revealed, he began, his voice trembling with emotion. As he read the words he had engraved, the people murmured in protest. Many couldn't understand how a just God could allow a nation as wicked as the Babylonians to bring judgment upon them. How is this justice? A man shouted from the crowd. Habakkuk raised his hand, calling for silence. I know it's hard to accept. I, too, questioned the Lord. But he showed me something greater. This vision is not just about destruction. It is a promise of justice, a promise that evil will not triumph forever. The people's expressions softened, though doubts still lingered. Then Habakkuk recited the words that would seal the message. The righteous will live by faith. A hush fell over the crowd. Some began to weep, while others stood frozen, trying to grasp the weight of the message. Habakkuk saw a flicker of hope ignite among them, but he knew the journey ahead would be long and arduous. Would the people of Judah have enough faith to endure what was to come? The exile approaches. The days following Habakkuk's proclamation were tense. Word spread that the Babylonians were drawing closer, and panic gripped the village. Habakkuk walked among the people, hearing their murmurs and fears. Some sought solace in the message he had shared, but many outright rejected it. You brought us harsh words, prophet, but where is the deliverance? Shouted a man, his voice filled with bitterness. All we hear is destruction and pain. Habakkuk had no easy answers. He wrestled with his own doubts, still questioning in the quiet of his heart. At night, locked in his small home, he knelt on the cold floor, crying out to God. Lord, I understand that you are just, but why use such a cruel nation to correct your people? Is there no other way? The answer came, not as before, but through a stillness that settled deep within him. It was as if God were saying, trust me, even when you do not understand. The next morning, the sound of trumpets shattered the air. It was a sound that froze every heart. A Babylonian patrol had been spotted near the borders. Judah's soldiers were few and poorly equipped. Many villagers began to flee, abandoning their homes for the safety of the hills. Habakkuk stood firm. He knew there was no point in running. God had shown him that judgment was unavoidable. Yet the weight of his calling bore down on him. With the same tablet he had used to write the vision, he walked to the village square. Listen, he shouted, raising the tablet above his head. What is happening now is not the end. God has not abandoned his people. How can you say that? Cried a woman, tears streaming down her face. We are being destroyed. Habakkuk stepped down from the stone platform and approached her. His gaze was intense, but filled with compassion. God showed me that this pain is like labor pains. The suffering is great, but it precedes a new beginning. Even though we cannot see it now, he has promised justice. The woman sobbed, clutching Habakkuk's hands. But others were not as receptive. A group of younger men approached, their faces hard with defiance. And what are we supposed to do while we wait for this new beginning? One of them demanded. Stand by and watch as the Babylonians destroy everything we have? Habakkuk took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their doubts. The Lord told me that the righteous will live by faith. Not by strength, not by revenge. Believing in his promises is what will sustain us. His words did not satisfy everyone, but they began to take root in some hearts. That night, the first signs of the Babylonians appeared. Distant campfires glimmered on the horizon, a foreboding sign of the army's advance. Habakkuk climbed once more to the hill where he often prayed. From there, he could see the threatening lights and hear the faint, steady rhythm of war drums. Lifting his eyes to the starry sky, he prayed aloud. "Lord, I have heard of your fame, I stand in awe of your deeds. Renew them in our time, in the midst of the years. In your wrath, remember mercy." As he spoke, Habakkuk felt a strange calm wash over him. He didn't know how, but he believed that God was present, even in this darkness. Habakkuk knew the siege was only the beginning. What he didn't know was that amid the chaos, he would be called to do something that would change the course of his own life, and the lives of generations to come. The weight of the prophecy. The days following the Babylonian advance were marked by destruction and terror. The enemy army encircled the village with brutal precision, and the people of Judah began to feel the full weight of God's judgment. Fields were burned, supplies dwindled, and hunger and despair hung over the village like a suffocating shadow. Habakkuk, however, refused to abandon his people. He walked the narrow streets, tending to the sick, comforting the despairing, and reminding them of God's promises whenever he could. Yet, the burden of the prophecy weighed on him more heavily than ever. One night, as the prophet rested under the starlit sky, he was awakened by a woman carrying a pale, frail child in her arms. "Prophet, save my son. He's dying of hunger." Habakkuk felt his heart tighten. He had no food to give, only words of comfort that felt inadequate in the face of such dire need. "The Lord is our sustainer," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "Cry out to him, for his mercy will come." The woman nodded, but the look in her eyes said more than words ever could: doubt, frustration, and a fragile thread of hope. That same night, Habakkuk climbed the hill where he so often prayed. Gazing at the distant stars that seemed impossibly far away, he cried out, "Lord, how much longer must we endure this? The people are dying, and yet you ask us to live by faith?" Once again, silence enveloped him, but this time it wasn't empty. Habakkuk felt a quiet calm, as though it rose from deep within. He realized, however faintly, that God's purpose was greater than the suffering of this moment. The next day, as he walked through the village, Habakkuk saw something that stopped him in his tracks. A family, sitting in the shade of a withered olive tree, was sharing a small piece of bread. Despite the scarcity, they held hands and prayed. "Lord, thank you for today's bread," said the father, his voice steady. Habakkuk felt his eyes fill with tears. This was the faith God had called him to proclaim, a steadfast trust in God, even when all seemed lost. He returned to the village square, and with a voice worn but resolute, he began to speak. "Listen, people of Judah. I know everything around us seems dark. I know the suffering is immense, and justice seems far away. But God has shown me that his justice never fails. He promised that the righteous will live by faith, and today I saw that faith alive among us." Some paused to listen. Others walked away, skeptical. Habakkuk knew not everyone would believe, but he was determined to continue sharing the vision God had entrusted to him. That night, he began to compose a prayer, a cry that reflected not only his anguish but also his trust in the God who had promised to restore his people. Habakkuk could feel that something was about to happen. God was preparing the next step, and the prophet knew he would need an even greater faith to face what lay ahead. The song in the darkness. On the darkest night Habakkuk had ever known, the prophet sat on the cold floor of his small home. Outside, the silence of the village was broken only by the distant sounds of the Babylonian troops, the clinking of armor, the barked commands in an unfamiliar language. Habakkuk felt the weight of the moment, but also something unexpected, a peace that defied all understanding. He stood, picked up his writing tablet, and began to compose something his heart compelled him to create. It wasn't a prophecy, but a prayer, a song of faith rising from the depths of his soul. The words flowed like a stream through a barren desert. Lord, I have heard of your fame, I stand in awe of your deeds. Renew them in our day, in our time make them known, in wrath, remember mercy. Habakkuk's mind returned to the vision God had shown him. He saw again the scorched fields, the captives being led away, but also the glow of something greater, something eternal. God came from Teman, the Holy One from Mount Paran. His glory covered the heavens, and his praise filled the earth. As he wrote, the words became a hymn of hope. He didn't deny the pain, but he acknowledged that the God who allowed the suffering was also the one who would bring redemption. At dawn, Habakkuk left his home, tablet in hand. He walked to the village square, where the people were gathered, weary and resigned, waiting for the worst. Without a word, Habakkuk began to recite his prayer aloud. His voice rang out, strong and steady. Though the fig tree does not bud, and there are no grapes on the vines, though the olive crop fails, and the fields produce no food, though there are no sheep in the pen and no cattle in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord, I will be joyful in God my Savior. The people paused, their attention drawn. Some looked at him in surprise, others had tears in their eyes. It was as if Habakkuk was singing their sorrow, but also their hope. The sovereign Lord is my strength, he makes my feet like the feet of a deer, he enables me to tread on the heights. When he finished, a profound silence settled over the square. No one moved for a moment. Then, a woman began to sing the words he had spoken, her voice trembling but filled with faith. Soon, others joined in. Amid the looming destruction, the village of Judah resonated with Habakkuk's song, a declaration of trust in God. That night, Habakkuk climbed the hill once more. He looked up at the starry sky and, for the first time in what felt like ages, smiled. Not because the troubles had vanished, but because his heart was finally at peace. Yet in the stillness of that peace, Habakkuk received a new vision, something so profound and mysterious that he knew it had to be kept until the right moment. Was this God's final answer? The vision of the end. As the village slept under the oppressive watch of the Babylonians, Habakkuk remained on the hill. The prayer he had composed still echoed in his mind, but something else began to take hold of his thoughts. Once again, the wind ceased, and the night sky filled with a light that did not come from the stars. Habakkuk felt the same shiver he had experienced during his first vision. A powerful voice called out, "Habakkuk, faithful servant, lift your eyes and see." The prophet obeyed, and before him appeared a vision so vivid it seemed to be unfolding in real time. He saw Judah in ruins, its walls toppled, its fields desolate. The people marched in long chains, captives being led away. Habakkuk's heart ached as he witnessed such pain, but the vision did not stop there. Suddenly, the scene shifted. He saw a majestic figure clothed in radiant garments, standing atop a hill. Surrounding him were multitudes from every nation, each face turned toward him in awe and reverence. Though Habakkuk could not discern the figure's face, an unshakable certainty filled his heart: this was the fulfillment of divine justice. The voice of God spoke again. "As the earth will be filled with the knowledge of my glory, as the waters cover the sea, so too will my people be restored. But the time has not yet come." Habakkuk fell to his knees, overcome by a mix of awe and trembling. "Lord, who is he? How will this promise be fulfilled?" "Keep this vision, Habakkuk," the voice commanded with authority. For at the appointed time, what you see will be revealed. As the light of the vision faded, Habakkuk found himself alone once more on the hill. But he was no longer the same. Despite the weight of the prophecy, his heart now carried an unshakable certainty: evil would not have the final word. The next morning, Habakkuk gathered the village leaders. He knew he could not share the full vision, but he needed to convey the hope he had received. "Listen," he began, his voice steady and calm. "God has shown me that our suffering has a purpose. Justice will come, but the time is not yet. Until then, we must live by faith, trusting that the Lord has not abandoned his people." The leaders listened intently, though some still hesitated. "How can we know these promises are not just empty words?" one of them asked. Habakkuk looked at him, his eyes glowing with conviction. "Because the God who made the promise is faithful. What he has begun, he will bring to completion." As the leaders dispersed, Habakkuk lingered, gazing toward the horizon. He knew he bore a secret the world was not yet ready to hear. But he also knew that one day, at the appointed time, the fulfillment of the promise would reveal the truth of everything he had proclaimed. The choice of Habakkuk. The days that followed brought the inevitable approach of judgment. The Babylonians intensified their presence, surrounding nearby villages and sending messengers to demand surrender. Habakkuk's village would not be spared. The prophet watched as despair grew among the people, like a storm threatening to break. Habakkuk carried the weight of the secret God had entrusted to him. The vision he had received on the hill was clear yet veiled in mystery. He knew he was to guard it until the appointed time, but how could he remain silent while his people suffered? That night, as the village lay wrapped in a heavy silence, Habakkuk entered his home, closed the door, and knelt down. "Lord, you have shown me the end and the beginning. You have commanded me to wait, but the people need hope now. Grant me wisdom to know what to do." For a moment, the silence seemed overwhelming, but then a deep calm settled over him. No words were spoken, yet he understood. Faith in God's plan required obedience, even amidst uncertainty. The next day, Habakkuk gathered the village elders. While he could not reveal the entire vision, he decided to share part of the promise. "The Lord has shown me that though judgment is coming, restoration will follow. One day, God's people will be gathered again, and his glory will be revealed to all nations." The elders looked at him with a mixture of disbelief and hope. "But how, prophet?" one of them asked, his voice heavy with pain. "How can we believe in restoration while our enemies march against us?" Habakkuk sighed. He knew the faith he preached was difficult to practice. "We do not know all of the Lord's ways," he said, "but he has told me, the righteous will live by faith. That is what we must do, trust, even when we cannot see." That same night, an unexpected turn of events unfolded. A Babylonian messenger arrived in the village with an ultimatum: surrender and swear allegiance to King Nebuchadnezzar, or face total destruction. The people gathered in the central square. A decision had to be made, and the elders were divided. Many wanted to surrender, believing it would give them a chance to survive. Others wanted to fight, even knowing the odds were hopelessly against them. Habakkuk listened to the debates in silence, but he knew he could not remain silent for long. Finally, he raised his hand to address the crowd. "Listen. It is not our place to fight the Babylonians or resist the plan of God. Whether we choose to surrender or resist is not what truly matters. What matters is that our faith remains unshaken." The people fell silent, contemplating his words. "But how, prophet?" a woman asked. "How can we have faith when everything around us is falling apart?" Habakkuk took a deep breath. feeling the weight of their doubts and fears. Because the God who has brought us this far is the same God who will lead us to the end. No matter what comes, we must hold on to his promise, he will not abandon us. The people remained divided, and Habakkuk knew his message of faith would be tested in the dark days ahead. Yet he also understood that, somehow, this choice, whether to trust or despair, would shape the future of Judah. The prophet's legacy. The Babylonians' ultimatum hung over the village like a final sentence: surrender or face destruction. The people, torn between fear and defiance, desperately searched for a solution. Habakkuk, however, remained steadfast in his faith, though his heart ached at the suffering around him. He knew his mission was not to save Judah by his own hands but to remind the people that God was still in control. That morning, the prophet walked the dusty streets. He saw mothers clutching their children, men arguing passionately on street corners, and elders staring at the horizon as if bracing for the inevitable. Habakkuk felt the heavy weight of responsibility. "Prophet, tell us what to do," a man shouted. Habakkuk stopped and faced the small crowd gathering around him. His tired eyes conveyed both sorrow and resolve. "I cannot decide for you," he replied firmly. "But I will tell you this, even if the Babylonians take us, the Lord remains our God. Our land may be destroyed, but our faith cannot be taken from us." Habakkuk's words spread like the wind through the village. Some felt a new strength rise within them, while others accused him of surrendering to despair. "How can a prophet of God ask us to accept judgment? Where is the promise of deliverance?" a young man demanded. Habakkuk looked at him with patient but resolute eyes that quieted the accusations. "Deliverance will come, but not in the way we desire. God does not act according to our will but according to his eternal purposes." As the Babylonians' deadline drew near, tension gripped the village. Fear hung as thick as the smell of smoke from neighboring villages already plundered. Yet, amidst the chaos, something began to change. Small groups gathered at night to recite the prayer Habakkuk had composed. "Though the fig tree does not bud, and there are no grapes on the vines." Those words, once a solitary cry, became a chorus of faith. Men, women, and children clung to the prayer as an anchor in the storm. Habakkuk saw it as a sign that his message was taking root. The night before the ultimatum expired, Habakkuk climbed once more to the hill where he had often prayed. He looked down at the village, illuminated only by scattered fires, and felt a deep compassion for his people. He knew the village would likely be plundered, but he also believed that the faith he had planted in their hearts would endure. "Lord, I place these people in your hands. Not because we are worthy, but because you are merciful." At dawn, the Babylonians entered the village. Many surrendered peacefully, while others were taken as captives. Habakkuk did not flee. He stood firm amid the chaos, continuing to proclaim God's promises to those willing to listen. Even as he was led away in chains with the rest of the people, Habakkuk knew his mission was not over. The secret he carried, the vision of hope and justice, remained with him. He believed that one day it would be revealed in a way the world would never forget. The hidden secret. Habakkuk walked with the other captives, shackled and his feet caked with dust. The journey to Babylon was long and grueling, filled with the shouts of guards and the ceaseless sound of weary footsteps. Yet, the prophet's spirit remained unbroken. He understood that what was happening was part of God's divine plan, even if the people couldn't comprehend it at the time. During the nights, around the small fires the captives were allowed to kindle, Habakkuk shared words of hope. "We are not alone," he would say in a soft but resolute voice. "The God of Judah is still with us, even in a foreign land." Some listened with reverence, while others turned away, unable to trust in any promise. Yet, Habakkuk kept speaking, not to persuade, but to plant seeds. One night, as he rested under a sky brimming with stars, Habakkuk was given another glimpse of the vision God had shown him. Once again, he saw the majestic figure standing on a hill, surrounded by multitudes from every nation. But this time, something new became clear. The crowds weren't merely gathered in reverence, they were singing with joy, proclaiming a kingdom of peace and justice. The prophet woke with a start, his heart racing. He understood, more clearly than ever, the meaning of the vision. It pointed to something far greater than the return of the people to Judah. It foretold an eternal fulfillment, a promise that would transcend generations. Habakkuk kept this revelation in his heart, knowing it was not yet time to fully disclose it. He continued instead to emphasize the need for faith. "The righteous will live by faith," he repeated to the captives, his words ringing out as a constant reminder. When they reached Babylon, the people were scattered, and Habakkuk faded from the pages of written history. Yet his message endured. The prayer he had composed was passed down, becoming a hymn of hope. His words about faith became a cornerstone for the exiles who would face decades of separation from their homeland. But the secret Habakkuk carried remained hidden for generations. He understood that his vision pointed to something far greater, a promise that would be revealed in the fullness of time. What Habakkuk saw was a glimpse of what would come centuries later, an eternal kingdom established by a just and merciful king. Yet, the prophet left this world without witnessing its fulfillment. The secret he carried lived on in the words he left behind: "The righteous will live by faith." And so, Habakkuk's story reminds us that God is faithful, even in the darkest times. He does not abandon his people, and his promises are fulfilled in his perfect timing. But now I ask you, what does it mean for you to live by faith, even when the answers remain unclear? Share your reflections on this inspiring story in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. This is Stories That Embrace. Stay blessed, and see you in the next story.